Gentlemen, our first session for the day, which is business session number 3 on your list, and business session 3 to be followed throughout Lucky Dip contest, will be the change is the only constant. To take us through this, joining us is an entrepreneur. He's the vice chairman of Mercury Travel and the chairman of Wire.com. May I request all of you to please put your hands together and welcome Mr. Ashwini Kakkar.
Let me start the day by bringing to you the definition that the American military uses for defining the fast-changing world that we live in. The US Armed Forces call this the VUCA world. So what is this VUCA world? The VUCA world that we live in is supposed to be volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. You might say, this is all right for the US Army, but what have I got to do with it? Let me tell you that large corporations like General Electric Company, like Unilever, have all adopted this VUCA definition, and they currently run their businesses according to the VUCA philosophy. And nowhere else does this VUCA philosophy have more relevance than our own travel and tourism industry. Because as we all know, black swan events are increasing in intensity and frequency. Ebola, SARS, swine flu, lots of these things are impacting our business like never before. Terrorism, killings, all kinds of things are happening around us, which are making sure that we really realize that the VUCA world is here to stay, and we have to deal with this VUCA world on a daily basis. More than this, security and safety costs are being added to the equation of hotels, of airlines, of travel agents, and eroding our profitability as well. Under these conditions, the travel agents are being asked on a daily basis to take decisions, to plan people's visits, to make sure that people are safe and secure around the world. And not only are we being asked to do this for our customers, we are being asked to run our own businesses in this hugely complex world. And clearly, this is our strength. Our ability to deal with everything in this VUCA world, and also to be able to stay nimble and asset light, is what distinguishes us from the rest of the business world. And this is what is going to take us forward as we move into the years to come. This is not all. If we look at the situation, there are a lot of internal changes happening in our industry. Look at products. In our industry, new types of products are coming. We have today on our doorstep the A380s, which are capable of carrying 800 passengers. We have the Dreamliners. We have all kinds of new hotel products, the W's, and at a local level, the Ginger, the Formula One, all these kind of things. And also, on the anvil are driverless cars and the advent of space travel. So all this is right in front of our face. If we look at the technological front, What is going on in technology? Of course, the internet has made sure that there is mass distribution of products. But beyond this, the mobile apps, cloud computing, big data, lot of these technologies are right upon us, and we need to figure out how we are going to participate in this new world along with these new technologies. If we look at the customer segments, new segments are emerging. The silver grays, single traveling women, IT techies, and other segments, for example, youth travel, and also the importance that people are giving to weddings, honeymoons, anniversaries, and special occasions. Apart from all of this, if we look at consumer behavior, how are our customers behaving? The new order of the day is closer, shorter, cheaper, later. This is how our consumers are behaving when it comes to travel. They are traveling to closer destinations, short haul mostly. 70% of global traffic is short haul and only 30% is long haul. So they're traveling closer, they're doing shorter trips. Earlier, people used to do a 21-day or 28-day trip to the United States. Now they're saying, okay, give me a weekend, I have a long weekend, I want to go to a destination, take my family, and so on. So that is the shorter part of what they're trying to do. Cheaper. Cheaper does not necessarily mean that they don't want to pay anything. They're just looking for value for money. They are looking for better options for the same money. And what is a clear indicator of this is impulse buying. If the fare drops from here to here on a certain day, they say, okay, let's go. So that is cheaper, and mostly they are booking at the last minute. And if they're not booking last minute, they're doing impulse purchases. So closer, shorter, cheaper, later is the new order of the day as far as consumer behavior is concerned. So with all these changes in a VUCA world, with all these internal changes happening with our customers, the question I want to ask is, where are the new world travel agents? And where are the enlightened travel confederations which will take all of us into a brighter future? So the answer is not a simple one. But let me start with the very basic questions. Let me ask you, if you were not feeling well and you needed some treatment or diagnosis or something like that, where would you go? Obviously, you would go to a doctor. No, it's not rocket science. There's lots of data available. There's lots of advice. There are lots of tips. There's lots of remedies available on the internet. So why would you go to a doctor? Can't you just pull something off the net and treat yourself? No, but you go to a doctor. And what is even better is that when he gives you a medication and he gives you an amount for the fees, you never argue with him. Did you argue with the doctor? Oh my God, you're charging me 2,000. I only want to pay 200. Nobody ever does that. Right? Now, the same thing holds true if we want to put an advertisement in the newspaper or on television. Straight away, we go to an advertising agency. If we want to buy or maintain IT hardware and software, we go to an IT company. If we are fighting a legal case, we go to a lawyer. And the same thing holds true for all services. And in this case, the big difference is that we as the travel industry are not able to convince our customers that they must come to us again and again and again. Why are we not able to convince them? We are not able to convince them because we cannot show them that we have a wealth of knowledge, protection, and delivery. And we bring that to every single one of their travel schedules. Knowledge, protection, and delivery. And this is what we bring to the table. We bring it in an uncertain world. We bring it in a complex world. And yet, people do not understand what we bring to the party. Let's look at knowledge for a moment. There is such an overload of information on the internet. There's such an overload of information all over the place. There's brochures, there's all kinds of things happening. But there is a key deficit, and that deficit is what we can and we bring to the party every single day, and that is insight. But do we talk about this insight? Never. Equally, we also bring our human networks, we bring our business networks, and we are available 24/7 by 365. But does the customer understand this? Because it's not enough to be doing all this, doing it mostly for free. It is very, very, very important to explain all this to the customer and to say to him that, we bring a wealth of knowledge, protection, and delivery. We bring our human networks, we bring our business networks, and we are available to you 24/7 by 365. If we are able to explain this to the customer will be very happy to pay us a fair price. And on this subject of fair price, let me tell you that for the last decade or so, if we analyze the data for all services, our industry is the unique and single example where service quality has gone up, but the concept of fair price has gone down. There is statistical evidence to show that in the IT and services industry in the last 10 years, the prices have gone up by 350%. In the legal services industry, the prices have gone up by 250%. In the medical services, the prices have gone up by 200%, and in the property services arena, the prices have gone up by 150%. But look at our industry, the travel and tourism industry. What has happened in our industry? The prices have gone down by 75%. We are at 25% of where we started 10 years ago. That's where we are. So what can we do to change this situation? What can we learn from all these other industries who are making such wonderful progress? From the IT industry, we can learn at least two things. One is bundling, and the other is recurring incomes. They bundle everything. You will get the computer, you will also get the Microsoft software, you will also get this, you will get antivirus. I bundle this whole thing for you. I give it to you for 60,000 rupees. Why can't we do the same? We can bundle insurance, foreign exchange, passport, visa, a whole lot of things, bundle them. So bundling is one thing we can learn from the IT industry. What else can we learn? Recurring incomes. Earlier, when I was a little boy, we used to buy Microsoft software for 800 rupees. And it was just as one-time purchase, it was over. What has the industry done? Now they charge you annual maintenance charges, and you don't even own the software. So this is something else that we need to work on. Why, for example, can we all not come together and say that we will all charge on an annual basis a passport maintenance charge of $5 per person per passport for the whole year? In this, we will manage the visas, we will manage the passport, we will manage the renewals, and God forbid, if there's ever a need, we have it all electronically stored, and we will make sure that the data is furnished to anybody who might need it. Now, there are 40 million passport holders in the country. If we charge $5 per passport, we have a ready-made business of $200 million. So this is recurring income. And there, we can apply it in other areas, but at least this is one quick example of what can be done. Similarly, banking. What can we learn from the banking industry? They have high quality but fewer people, and they make extensive use of technology. So I think these are areas where we also need to work upon. What can we learn from the medical profession? We can learn from them consulting and advisory. How are we going to charge for our consulting? How are we going to make sure that people understand advisories, and so on and so forth? And what can we learn from the retail industry? The retail industry teaches the lifetime value of a customer. I remember once I was in the United Kingdom at a Tesco training program, and in walks the first business speaker, and he is wearing this cap. What does this cap say? $150,000. He said, this is the lifetime value of one customer of Tesco, and what he will bring to all of us if we can manage to retain him. The same concept applies for all of us. If we do not understand the lifetime value of a customer, we have lost everything. Can you imagine? 15 lakhs, more or less, is what the customer is going to spend if he is continuously doing business with us. Equally, I think loyalty and how to build it is almost a proper science now, and we all need to work on building loyalty programs for our customers. From other service providers, we can learn how to use service quality as a differentiator. How we can provide speedy and reliable service and make sure that the customer can stay with us forever. How can we do this? If we just have the ability to look around the world and say, these are troubled spots, these are the kind of black swan events that are likely in the next 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. If we look at all the travel advisories that are being issued by various countries, and if we develop the capability to ring-fence the customer in times of a calamity, then I think we would have changed the game as far as service quality is concerned. On another front, if we look at the providers now, we've looked at what the industry is doing, what other industries are doing. Let's look at our own providers. The International Hotel Association of the United States just did a major study. At the turn of the century, their premise was, we are paying travel agents 10%, and that is completely crazily expensive. What a nonsensical situation. We are paying travel agents 10%. They did a study from 2000 to 2013, and they came up with the results late last year, the first cut results. And this is all available on the net. You can Google it. And the study said to them, dear friends, you are globally getting a business of $30 billion from the net and net related services, and you are ending up paying $5 billion. So that is a net of 20% only to one company, and that is Google. There are other costs associated with this. So averagely, what is being paid for today by the hotel industry, and that is part of the reason why the hotel industry is going the same direction as the airline industry, is they are paying between 20% and 30% of the price of a room as the charge for getting the customer to them. Unbelievable. So what did we do wrong? I think we still have a chance to bring back some of that glory, but we have to approach it in a smart and elegant manner. The same way, if we look at airlines, the other provider, globally, airlines are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But the question I want to ask is, are they getting any stronger? And the answer is no. They're getting weaker and weaker and weaker. What is the point of being bigger and bigger if you are not going to be stronger and stronger? I think the pendulum will swing a little bit. It may not swing the whole way. It will swing a little bit. And I am sure that some of the airlines, at least, will realize the value of using the agents as an extended arm to provide real service to real customers. And what I want to highlight here is that at least travel agents can bring to the airline a certain amount of loyalty, which a computer program, which is constantly looking only for the cheapest price, can never bring to an airline. But I think this is a dialogue that needs to be initiated. Somebody needs to pick up the cudgels and have these discussions at the right levels with the right providers. On the other hand, the rise of budget providers, whether it's budget hotels, budget airlines, and so on and so forth, both in India and abroad, is something that both us as the travel agents and our enlightened confederations need to pick up and discuss so that we can create shared value for them and for us. Now, you might say, this is all a gloom and doom story. What are we doing? And while we may not be satisfied with the current state of affairs, what I want to say to you is, it is still one of the best business opportunities in the world, and we are really, really lucky to be part of this huge, big business opportunity, which is the fastest growing industry in the world. Let us take at a global level. International arrivals across the globe, it took us many centuries to get to a level of 1 billion travelers around the globe. Many centuries. But what is estimated is that the next billion, going from 1 billion to 2 billion, will only take 1 decade. In the next decade, we will add 1 more billion of global travelers into our kitty. If we look at the India scenario, what is happening within India, closer to home? Look at corporate travel. How big do you think an opportunity corporate travel is? It's a $25 billion opportunity today as it exists. And the estimated growth rate per annum is 7.6%, which is likely to almost double this whole thing in the next 10 years. Amazing stuff. If we look at outbound, last year we had 18 million outbound passengers. This number will go to 50 million, 18 million to 50 million in the next 10 years. And today, they are spending $15 billion, but they will be spending $30 billion within the next 10 years. And these are annual numbers, annual spends. This is not over a period of time. Every year, people will spend $30 billion to travel abroad. Similarly, if we take domestic travel, last year, we had 1.1 billion trips within the country. And in the next 10 years, this is almost going to double to 2 billion trips. And within 10 years. And if we look at inbound, there were 7 million inbound travelers, and that number in the next decade is likely to double to 15 million inbound travelers. So every part of the business at a global level, it's doubling. At a domestic level, it's doubling. If we look at the online space, this year, the run rate will cross $10 billion of online sales. And this is contributed to not by just B2C, but also by B2B. But it's a huge number. Today, 12% of India is using the internet to buy their tickets. But an alarming number is double that, which is almost 24% of the young people between 18 and 30 are using the mobile to buy their tickets. So this is very, very interesting, and we can have a lot to do in this space as well. What is even more alarming is the rise of Asia. Asia will become the crucible of world travel in the next 10 years. Today, 21% of the world's outbound traffic is generated from Asia. But in 10 years, 1/3 of the inbound traffic and 1/3 of the world's outbound traffic, all of these will emanate only from Asia, making Asia the absolute crucible of world travel. And if you look 20 years hence, there is an IATA study which tells you that about 50% of the world's flights will touch Asia at the end of a 20-year period. Year after year after year. So aren't we lucky that we are in Asia? How can we grab this opportunity with both hands? You know, it's an amazing opportunity. Everybody is realizing this opportunity. What do you think governments are doing? Governments are saying, I launch my e-visa. I launch a visa on arrival. Come. Because Asia is going to be the next big thing in travel. Not only at that level. Look at the travel leaders within Asia. They are going to disrupt whatever is happening in the travel world all across the globe. Look at some of the big names that are coming out. Alibaba, Ctrip, Baidu, Rakuten, Make My Trip, Buy.com. There's lots and lots of these models which are so different from what happens in the rest of the world. And these are going to disrupt everything as we move forward. And newer ones are going to come and disrupt even more and more. If we look at global players focusing on Asia and Asian habits, the best example is Airbnb, who are changing the complete paradigm by bringing budget-conscious shared accommodation to everybody, whether he's Asian, non-Asian, or of any other origin. So what would be our recommendation for all our partner travel agents who are in the inbound business? I would say, please hire some Mandarin speakers. Let them loose in China and other parts of Asia, Taiwan, Seoul, and so on and so forth, Korea. And make sure that India gets an adequate amount of business from this whole Asian revolution. And why is Asia going to be so important? Not only because so much traffic is going to come in and go out of Asia, not only because the companies that are developing here are going to be world leaders, but also because Asians by nature, whether it's Chinese, Indians, Japanese, Koreans, Taiwanese, or anybody, we are much more demanding in service. It is culturally inherent in us to be much more demanding in service. And even if the Gartner situation is to be believed, which is fairly truthful, which is that the current level of internet bookings, which are at about 12%, move in the direction of 50%, and whether they will hit 40 or 45 or 50, I dare say that the average travel agent will still have more business at the end of the decade than he has today. Because if the business is doubling, half of it is taken away by online and mobile commerce and other new forms of business, there is still the other half left for us. And don't forget, a lot of us play in the online and mobile commerce space, and most important, a lot more of us will be playing in that space. So I dare say that there will be enough and more business available at the end of the decade for all of us. There is some interesting things, and yesterday we heard a speaker who talked about the beautiful positives of crowdsourcing. I'm a big believer in crowdsourcing. I think it's a fantastic way to get everybody to contribute and to come up with some great numbers, great ideas, and great thoughts. But I just want to present for your consideration a view that is slightly different from the view on crowdsourcing presented by my able speaker, motivation speaker yesterday. What I want to propose to you is that the customer is emerging as a servant of the organization. This is another way of looking at the same story. How is he emerging as a servant of the organization? First of all, he's emerging as a servant of the organization as a buyer. He's scouring the net. He's spending 16 hours trying to look here, there for the best destination, for the best price, for the best airline ticket, for the best hotel room, for the best, what works for his family, whether his child can do this, not, whatever. As a buyer, he's spending 16, 20 hours per holiday booked, and that is substantial amounts of time. The second thing he's doing is he's acting as an advisor. So he's commenting on everything. He's saying, okay, this is good, this hotel is bad, this hotel was not so nice, this airline, this is the problem. He's also trying to rate every service and do his bit as a supplicant and as an advisor. The third part is he's acting as a salesman. How is he acting as a salesman? He's giving recommendations to so-and-so, Arey, go there, that is a very nice property. Or I give you the names of 5 of my contacts, and they will be very happy to go to these places. Or he's doing various kinds of things, references, contacts, posts, blogs. He's doing all kinds of things as a salesman. And at the highest level, he's even becoming a designer of products. He's expanding on likes, dislikes, saying this will work, that will not work. Let me generate a new idea for you. And the best example of this is the iPhone. When the first iPhone was created and launched, if all of you remember, there were problems with the ring, and the thing was not working. It had huge problems. So what did the company do? This was a great crowdsourcing idea. The company set up a site called Please Fix the Phone. And in this site, within 1 week, they got 60,000 ideas on how to fix the phone. They implemented only 12 or 15 and got the phone working. But that's another matter. But it was all about crowdsourcing. That's how crowdsourcing can work. But at another level, if you realize what is more important in your life, then you will realize how the pendulum which has swung in one direction might actually swing back a little in the other direction. And this is a favorite subject of mine. I'd spoken about it once a few years ago, but I would like to repeat it in a very short version for today. The hypothesis is that time is replacing money as the most important commodity in people's lives. Because if you live for 90 years on this planet, you will have lived only for 30,000 days. Okay? It's very finite. And there's no guarantee that you will live for 90 years. Similarly, you can start a business. You can lose all your money. You get a second chance. You get a third chance. You get a fourth chance. But when Yamraj is standing at your door saying your time is up, there is absolutely no more time. Now clearly, if you value time, you have one set of responses. If you value other things, you have another set of responses. And my hypothesis goes on to say that the world of customers is polarizing into cash-rich, time-poor customers and time-rich, cash-poor customers. And these opposite segments offer opportunities for all of us. There are many combinations in the middle. Little bit of time, little bit of cash, too much time, too much cash. All kinds of combinations exist between the two, but the ends of the spectrum are cash-rich, time-poor, and time-rich, cash-poor customers. And I think that's where our big opportunity lies. And going forward, I think all of us, regardless of whether we belong to this category or that category, are anyway under pressure. Why are we under pressure? Because the average human being today is looking at his mobile phone 150 times a day. Already creates enough pressure in our lives. And this in a more aggressive world, and this in a much more complicated world. The other thing which I have talked about in the past, but I just want to highlight again, is the pace of change of technology. Technology is changing at an amazing pace. For getting the first 10 million customers, it took the telephone, Alexander Graham Bell's telephone, it took them 42 years. And so on and so forth. I won't bore you to tears with what happened to the television, what happened to radio, what happened to various things. But the iPhone achieved 10 million customers in 4 days. So this is the pace of change of technology. The internet took 11 months, but the iPhone took 4 days. And going forward, it may be a few hours to get to 10 million customers. So the moral of this story is that every day, someone somewhere is trying to build a better mousetrap. And these mousetraps are spawning disruptive technologies. It's not on a straight line. Things are not happening in a gradual way. Suddenly, there's a huge disruption. And that is what is changing everything. And going forward, there's a lot of disruption which we don't even know about, which is on us today. A vaccine against heart attacks. Printable human parts, nose, fingers, all kinds of things. You know, if we look at the Internet of Things, all of these things, driverless cars, they're here today. So we're not talking over 100 years later, we're not talking about 20 years later, it's here today. These are things which are being tested in the laboratories. They're almost going to be available to you in the next year or so. So in this kind of world, we are also saddled with some new paradigms from what we know, from what you and I know, what you and I grew up with. We grew up thinking reading, writing, arithmetic, the 3 big R's of education. Do you remember this? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. What is the new language of the world? It's not reading, writing, and arithmetic. Yes, it has some relevance as we go forward in the future. What are the new things? Photo literacy. Do you know that 250 million photographs are being added on to Facebook every day? 250 million photographs. What is the new paradigm? Video literacy. 48 hours of video are being loaded onto YouTube every minute. 48 hours of new content being loaded onto video every minute. App literacy. There are more than 2 million apps currently available to all of us. I dare say none of us uses more than 10 or 20. More than 2 million apps. Device literacy. There are 16 billion devices connected to 6.8 billion people. So more than 2 devices are connected per person averagely across the world. So device literacy is becoming important. And social media literacy, because 1 out of 5 page views in the world today is on Facebook. So I think there's a new kind of paradigm that is coming up. And as mobile converges with mobility, and as India crosses, which should be in the next month or so, 1 billion mobile phone owners, unbelievable. What is going to happen is that we as the travel community need to do something different. What we need to do is to build trustworthy, strong, and exclusive relationships with all our customers. Trustworthy, strong, and exclusive. How are we going to do this? It's not so difficult. Maybe we can get, and as an example, all our GDS partners to come with us, to do things with us, so that we can develop apps, and along with our mobile numbers, sit within the mobile phone of the customer on an exclusive basis, on a strong basis, and on a trustworthy and reliability basis, where we are the single point of contact for that customer forever and ever. So I think there's some great opportunities emerging for all of us, and we need to figure out how we are going to deal with those opportunities. Now, clearly, the internet has changed everything. What has the internet done? The internet has brought to us mass distribution. Everything is ubiquitously available all across the world. What else has internet done? It has created operational connectivity. Everybody can be connected with everybody, and that's a fantastic thing that the internet has done. And the last thing that the internet is fantastic at doing is democratization of prices. Bringing everything down to the lowest common denominator. You can get the lowest price on anything, any which way that you want. But where has the internet not made a dramatic dent? That is the area where we can succeed. And that is the area of personalized service. Because by definition, service is of the people, for the people, by the people. Now, as an aside, I have also done an economic thesis on why services will be the savior of the world when people serve other people, because every single human being needs to get a social income, needs to get an economic income, and unless those incomes can be provided, the world will be a very different place. But that's an aside. But for the purposes of our discussion, I think it's very important to realize that internet can do a lot of things, but personalized human service is something that only we can do. And how can we bring that to the fore so that we can combine with the internet. It's not about fighting the internet. It's about combining with the internet, combining with mobile commerce, and making sure that we are all on the winning side. Now let me take this discussion from us at individual levels to a discussion for enlightened federations and associations that we are all part of. I think there is a big role for the federations and associations to play as we move forward. There are 5 or 6 things which are absolutely crucial and need to be done. One is to be more proactive with governments so that we can have an influence on policies, on taxation, and ease of or facilitation of business for our community. These are the 3 areas where we need to work with governments. The second area is to make sure that we work with our partners, the airlines, the hotels, the transport companies, to make sure that we can derive formula and areas so that both sides understand that there is shared value, and we can work with them to create more and more value such that more and more can be shared between both the providers and ourselves. We can work with some of the other constituents to make sure that the customer gets rewarded. How can the customer get rewarded? He can get rewarded by new age solutions and by creating, for example, apps. So if we combine with a GDS provider and say everything that comes off your GDS will also get converted into something that will have my app, we will jointly create it. That app will have my mobile number, will have my internet access, and will sit in the mobile phone of my customer. So this is what we can do vis-a-vis our customers. And associations and federations and confederations can help us achieve this. Equally, I think there's a lot of stuff that can be done at a global level. Why can't we partner with other global networks? We are here, Travel Agents Federation of India. Why can't we partner with Israel, we partner with the United States, we partner with the rest of the world, and make sure that we build networks that are valuable and that are priceless? And the last thing that associations can do is to ensure the sustainability of the small agent. And if we cannot assure the sustainability of the small agent, we must ensure that we, as a trade body, can get them a fair, equitable, and proper exit opportunity. And this is not difficult to do. I was discussing with one of us last night that what needs to be done is to create a model of mergers and acquisitions where the companies that want to make the acquisitions and the companies that want to get acquired can all play in the same field with the same rules. It is defined that if your turnover is so much, if your profit is so much, this is the kind of multiple that will be applicable, and this is what will be done. And with the help of the trade bodies, some of this consolidation can go forward. It's not very inconceivable. We have to innovate. We have to create new models. And if we can do that, we will be doing good for our community. We'll be making sure that we are a stronger community to deal with. So on this note, while we have discussed this VUCA world, we have discussed internal changes, we have discussed fair pricing, and we have gone through the issue of what we can do with our partners like airlines and hotels. We've also discussed why Asia will be the crucible and how we can tap that opportunity, and what is happening at the customer level, how the customer is either emerging as a servant or as a partner of the industry. And then we moved on to talking about time replacing money as the most important commodity in people's lives, cash-rich, time-poor, and time-rich, cash-poor customers. We've talked about the pace of change of technology, and contiguous with that, the new literacy norms as we know them, and the role of associations and federations. So let me leave you with this last thought. On balance, as we look forward, we will see as much change in the next 20 years as humankind has seen in the last 20,000 years. We, all of us, we hold this bright future in our hands, but we must always remember that the future is not an extrapolation of the past. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll request you to stay back up on stage. And ladies and gentlemen, can we give a huge round of applause to Mr. Ashwini Kakkar? May I request Mr. Deepak Patel, who is the member of the convention committee, to please join us up on stage. So I'll request you to kindly join us at the center of the stage. And ladies and gentlemen, can we thank Mr. Ashwini Kakkar for sharing his insights and, of course, leaving us with that thought. Thank you so much, sir. In interest of time, we couldn't take in the Q&A, but ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kakkar will be around, so feel free to get in touch with him.